theory comes along, and they have like different paths that they can do, and it's can be fun. We don't have a class piano yet. We're trying to get one that's separate from your training, but it's part of your training right now. Theory of your training are separate. So I'm having a little bit of issues, but I'm going to try to correct some smack over here.
Also, the landscaping people are like surrounding our house. It's like exactly Great. I'm just looking at one right now.
And unmute. And we'll say hello, everyone. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to Kudomusicology, a Ludomusicology Literature review. I'm your host, Musicologess. And today is an exciting day because I believe this is the first time that I have covered a co-authored chapter. So collaboration, community, celebration, other C words. That's another good one. Context. I don't know. So, also, this is from the brand new, as of the end of April, The Intersection of Animation, Video Games, and Music, Making Movement Sing. It looks like Victorian wallpaper for the cover. They gave us a bunch of like kind of stock images that were like all these kind of backgrounds. And I remember Lisa thinking there was some piece of this that looked almost like a face. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. There was no real, we just didn't have we weren't allowed to like get our own cover art, basically, is what I'm saying, because it has to match the research and music series that this is a part of. So yeah, this is our book. And our book would not exist without Lisa, really. This was Lisa's baby, but also without folks like Brent, Ferguson, and TJ Laws-Nicola. Welcome.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for having us.
It's so good to have you and to discuss some of the things that are in this neat book that folks should get their libraries to buy. That's my current thing, because the hardback is it's pricey. There's an ebook that I think I need to pick up a copy of for myself. Like, I have the hard ones that they gave us, but I kind of want a digital version for ease of paging through and things, so that I don't have to just look through the proofs over and over. So welcome. It's so great to have you back. Because I've had both of you on for Ludomusicology study group collabs. Mm-hmm. So let's just back up a little bit and talk about how you both got into Ludomusicology as a whole, kind of your backgrounds in performance and scholarship and all these different places, and then you two have collaborated a bunch. You have multiple publications out now together, so I'm curious about how that partnership formed, and what that workflow looks like, what that process looks like. So, yeah, let's just start there.
There's so many things. You want us to start with, like, how we collaborate,
the entire history of the world. Yeah, let's start with your individual backgrounds, and then we can get to like how you met and how you started working together.
Oh, okay. I got my undergrad in vocal performance, and really enjoyed the research aspect of learning about roles. And I think a lot of us that like decide to do music professionally find that as you continue to do it, you sort of have to like let other things go, other like hobbies and stuff, to sort of like survive in this world. So out of all the hobbies that I sort of like let go through being a musician, I never let gaming go, and that was just sort of once I started talking to Brent and deciding that I was going to switch from performance to music history. It just sort of seemed like an organic direction to go that way.
Yeah. And I came into video games is what got me into music. A lot of us in Ludomusicology have that story to start out with, but that's what made me want to make music. So I studied composition and theory, and just wanted to get inside that style of music. And we met at Texas State, University. So I went there for my master's. I went to UTSA for San Antonio, University of Texas at San Antonio, for my bachelor's. And would you like to take over, DJ?
Yeah, we just we were hanging out, and as we pick up more part-time gigs and jobs and just try to like, well, make rent. We realized that we like weren't hanging out at all, and came to the conclusion that the only way we'd be able to like hang out, continue talking, and doing stuff together was to work together. And so we just decided that we would make it a point as we continue through our academic careers to work together. So that would be a surefire way of like continuing to hang out. And of course, for me, I had to do a master's before I could come into. So it's been a few years in the working, but finally, in the last few years, we're finally being able to like actually write stuff together and do that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I would say the process, I don't know if I'm skipping anything, you're welcome to ask questions in between, but the process is we usually have equal duties, a division of work, and then we play a game of editing volleyball, I guess you could say, just back and forth edits. We get into we've gotten into 17, 20 edits before on some things, just going back and forth and making it cohesive. Yes, I think so. And just trying to make it cohesive possible. Usually it's on media that we're consuming at the same time. So games or animation in that case. And we just kind of smash these two readings together through editing, and it becomes this pretty nice looking Frankenstein, hopefully by the end. That's our hope.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the part that always amazes me, because I really haven't done still a bit. Okay. Why would there be echo? NDI source. Still a bit of echo. I have no idea where that could be coming from, because I have everything muted now, but the NDI sources and me. Huh.
Probably on our end somehow.
It shouldn't be though, because Skype isolates the NDI feeds. So. And I don't think Ryan's here, because Ryan's getting ready for vacation. So still a bit. Okay, so I have not fixed the problem. Okay, let me think. Yeah, because I wouldn't want to change my input here. NDI 2, NDI. I'm messing with some buttons. As I do that, I will just say that the thing that impresses me about the collaborative work is there's a piece of like, okay, so then like you're both probably reading different sources, like kind of building a collaborative bibliography. Like, are you making to-do lists for each other of like, okay, I'm going to read that, like, we found this, I'm going to read this, you read this. Do you have like a Google Doc or like some kind of thing where you're like adding stuff to a shared document in real time? Or is it all like we're drafting and then emailing copies back and forth?
It's more of the second one. Like Brent says, we'll usually pick a topic, and then somebody, whoever the lead author is, will sort of run with the idea, and then we'll split it off into kind of like our respective, I guess, specialties. So if it's for me, then if we're writing about animation, then I'm the one writing about that, and Brent will write about anything that we do that talks about video games. and we read completely on our own and research completely on our own, and just sort of have faith that the other person wants to kind of we have sort of like the same idea. This is where it comes in handy that whoever we have a lead author for, like we usually have like an idea kind of going into it, and the other person sort of meets us halfway, and then it just sort of becomes like a process of like a draft, and the draft is where it really begins, and that's when we start volleyball editing. That's where it all kind of comes together, and where we look through it, and if we see like a gap in research or something that needs to be explained better, then the other person kind of like tells us. We kind of tell each other what's missing, kind of fill it in from there. And sometimes we'll send drafts back and forth where all we've done is like accepted changes and like moved a comma. And that happens to me a lot. I'll just get sick of editing and I'll just throw it back to Brent and be like, there, I moved a period, I changed it to a semicolon, and I added the word "the" at the end of the last paragraph. Take it away from me. But sometimes the edits are really substantial, but it really just kind of most of the collaboration comes from the editing process, and up until the drafting, we're pretty much on our own, doing our own separate thing. No Google Sheets, although that seems like a logical thing that we should do. Now that I'm saying it out loud.
No, and that being said as well, sometimes we'll hit walls when going through our portions, and at that point we do have like discussion sessions, and sometimes they're good, sometimes they kind of go in circles, just trying to figure out, I guess, issues or how we're going to tackle something specifically. Well, yeah.
I think I solved the audio issue, but I'm suspicious, and so that's where the stream has to tell me for sure. I'm suspicious because it doesn't seem like it should work the way that it's telling me it's working, you know? So maybe Andrew or someone can let us know who's paying attention here. Refresh the thumbs up, both audio and as a person. Yes. Okay, great. Good. We solved it. I can be less fiddly now. The downside to doing the sort of Google Doc thing is I feel like track changes is a little more thorough in documenting the changes as you go.
I agree.
But it can be nice to just have, especially if it was like in the research phase where it's like we're reading sources, we're taking notes on stuff, maybe throwing in pull quotes. I don't know how y'all do your research, but I do a very like extensive note-taking process. So that part I can see doing with something like a Google Doc.
That would make sense. We have completely different, I think, research styles and approach to it. I am in a deep, passionate love affair with Zotero, and it's got like everything that I need and want from that. So I have everything kind of blocked out and grouped in nice little collated binders with the tags and all of that stuff in Zotero, and Brent doesn't.
Mm-hmm. I'm on Team Brent, but it's only because I was using Evernote, and I'm just kind of, I do my own citations pretty meticulously because I have an editing gig as one of my side jobs, so I just got used to doing it myself, and I know
that makes sense.
It's like until you get yourself into the workflow and like do the learning curve, it's very easy. And I've been kind of annoyed at Evernote because they're constantly trying to get me to upgrade to where I can use it on more devices. And it's like every time I sign in. So now I'm kind of migrating years of things mostly to like a Google Drive, and then it's on the cloud, and then I can kind of access it everywhere. But I get that. You get really, really dedicated to a particular software.
It's just really great for me to be able to like look it all up wherever whenever I need it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm terrible. I just have these Word documents titled notes or something notes, and put my notes and the citation. And I like writing the citations myself when I'm doing the bibliography. It's
Yeah.
just, I don't know, calming. But it's,
I
I
totally
should,
get that.
I
I
should
know exactly what you
organize
mean,
it
because
better.
I'm the same way with it. Like I that's like a kind of for me, it's like I'm getting work done and I'm being productive, but it's very like low stakes. I can have something on and just be like, checking all the punctuation, get it where I want it. Like I do find that kind of soothing compared to certain other kinds of work that, requires a
I
lot more
do,
brain space.
but finding it is often a hassle because of the way I name things and how poorly organized I am sometimes. So I'm working on that. We'll just put it that way.
Yeah, organization. They don't teach you, I guess some people have advisors that talk with them about. I don't know of any examples of this, actually, of somebody whose like advisor was like, this is how I organize my research, or my notes, and like especially digitally. Like that's something I would show my, if I had a grad student like doing a thesis under me. I would be like, let me show you with all the weeds in it, like here's one of my folders for a publication I did, and here's how I've divided things up.
That's what I do. I do a little bit of that for the classes that I teach as well. A little like, let's peek behind what it is to like research stuff. See how awful this used to be. When I was doing my master's thesis, my laptop like fell off of the desk and broke, and all of my research, and this is on me. I hadn't backed it up in like months. All of it just gone. And in that moment, I was like, I need to find another way to organize my work. And I had to start over. So from that very hard lesson, it's I migrated to Zotero after the master's thesis, and haven't looked back, because I just couldn't bear the thought of keeping it all on my computer on some things, and I couldn't get a hold of and not be able to access it that way.
Yeah, it only takes one catastrophic fail.
Yes.
Yeah, I had this happen to a student this semester where they like lost a big chunk of work, and I was like, oh, you mean you don't hit save at the end of like literally every single thing you do, like just as a reflex? I am like control save, control save, control save. Like I could just type a period and I will do it. Just it's not even conscious. It's just this ingrained habit.
That little saved notice on the top of like your toolbar on the Google Doc. I did the same thing. That saved on this computer or whatever isn't in like parentheses. I'm like,
yeah.
save it. Yeah.
But a lot of organization, a lot of like the research process comes out of failure, and we don't talk about that much or enough, nor do we sort of give anybody the space to fail properly, because
that's very true.
There's kind of a way to go through that process, and there's things you can do to kind of mitigate having to have that. If you had somebody like go through that with you before you lose a master's thesis to it, but I still think there is some degree of, you have to have experienced a little bit of loss to kind of shape your habits. But yeah, I don't know. It's an evolving. I
think it's constantly evolving. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't talk about it much. I do a lot of metacognition about like sharing the types of things that I think nobody talks about, like with my students, even just in my regular grad classes and stuff. I even do it with my undergrads. I talk a lot about paying attention to your workflow and figuring out, what are my tendencies? Am I the type of person that will procrastinate, or are there certain parts of the process that I will spend more time on to avoid doing other parts, or, where are my pitfalls, and like how can I avoid that a little bit? And are there things organizationally I can do that can make my life slightly easier? So it's evolving, and right now I feel like I'm at a standstill with a lot of my work, despite this book coming out. There's things that are floating out there that should be getting done that are just, I don't know. I have a 2-year-old. Life ends up getting carried away.
There'll always be something though, right? Yeah. There's always so much work to be done. It's no matter how much you just got out this book. That's so amazing. Of course, you have probably like 3 other books in mind, several other articles, several gigs. You have your own personal life to worry about. And it's just never like never really ends. It never lessens either, which is sort of the
it only gets worse, thing. Everybody. Okay. It doesn't necessarily get worse. It stays busy and the busy changes. Is probably the better way to put that.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
And there's also pieces of it that are like intentional boundary setting too, that man, is it hard to unlearn some of that stuff in academia.
Oh yeah. I'm
still I mean, it's taken years, and like I'm still succumbing to it at times, but just saying, even I'm not going to respond to emails over the weekend for the most part. There are exceptions to that rule, but I have gigs and I have family time, and I'm trying to be better about that. Get out in my garden, touch grass. We actually don't have grass back there, but touch burgeoning tomato plants.
The metaphorical grass.
Yes, the metaphorical grass. So working on that kind of stuff too, and if it means that I'm a little less productive, I'm having a life. And that's okay too.
Yeah. And plus I think it's sort of it's really important in this capitalist society that you find moments of joy to like live your life. That's also can be revolutionary, and not to just work all the time. It's important to live.
Yeah, there's something to always being sort of pulled along as if you are, it's not like a dress rehearsal, but you're sort of preparing for something in the future, this amorphous life that you're going to lead, instead of like, no, it's actually happening right now in this day to day, like all the mundane little choices. So anyway, that's a digression, but hypercapitalism has to do with this chapter, so we'll jump to it.
Oh man, transition. All right.
So this chapter is called Who on Earth is Carmen Sandiego? 2 Case Studies in Oral Identity. And I didn't grab the page numbers, but I don't know, it's like 90 to like 100 or something. Somewhere in that range. So this is chapter 7 in our book. And some of you may know Carmen Sandiego from the cartoons. That's certainly what I grew up with. And also, do y'all remember the game show? It had like the catchiest theme song.
Yeah, they had the a cappella group. I forget what they're called.
The world is Carmen Sandiego. So I thought that was going to make an appearance, and then I heard this one. I'm like, oh, I remember this one too. But like it had been kind of a locked memory of the actual, and I think I had conflated them in my head. So I thought the theme song for the one was going to be the theme song for the other. But there have been a lot of spin-offs based on this. So
it was such a huge franchise in the 90s.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
So the whole thing came from Broderbund here. I don't know, how do you say the O with the slash through it?
I would say Broderbund.
It
doesn't matter.
So this all came from their 1985 game. Was that the very first thing that everything else was based on? Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I think so.
That's cool.
Yeah, we opened the chapter like talking about like them on the yacht tossing the ball around, and
on the yacht. Wow.
And they're just kind of a basic software company at that point, and I think they had done a few things at that time, but they just kind of just shelled it out. I don't know if was alcohol involved. Who knows? But I'm sure
it was on a yacht. You'd hope there's alcohol.
Yeah.
Some kind of a like, what do you drink on a yacht? Aperol Spritz seems yachty.
White wine spritzers.
Yeah. Anything with spritz in it. Or like what was that terrible Zima in the 90s? Zima
Yes,
is
because
yacht
when this
drink.
was like
Yeah.
done, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, everyone was drinking Tab and Zima.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they just came up with this idea. It got paired, I believe, with the almanac that
Mhm.
year as kind of a floppy disk.
An
The,
actual floppy back then,
an,
like
an
the
actual,
big one that
yeah.
flopped.
And it was very pixelated, very old school style. They definitely gave it a facelift for the version that we looked at. That's the version that we were familiar with,
Yeah.
growing up.
Yeah, so it's a software company. They do Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego, 1985, and again it was kind of just a tie-in, kind of like when like Microsoft Encarta had the digital encyclopedias that you would get on CD-ROM, but then there would be like a game in there. Um,
Yeah, exactly.
back in the day. We used to have these tie-in things where you're like, this is the whole reason to buy this, right? Like your parents are like, oh, cool, we'll have like an encyclopedia, and you're just playing the little like Mindscape game in the software or whatever. I remember that
No,
era fondly.
exactly. It became like so popular. It was just this really great time for like games and television in the late 80s to like mid 90s where you just had this huge boost in like edutainment type multimedia that was just really fostered in large part with like Nickelodeon and several other like software companies like Rotobund.
Yeah, I'm interested too, and there's probably work on this. So if anybody has citations, throw them my way. But in the history of animation, it's often been tied to children, and then we start kind of getting in the 60s and beyond more research on child development kind of getting brought into the development of the television, right? The idea being that like we can use this to teach, and this like whole edutainment idea kind of getting brought into animation specifically and video games, and then sort of having this cottage industry. And a lot of these games are people roll their eyes at like the learn how to, I don't know, learn your letters with a video game type games. A lot of them have kind of low resources. I remember Big Bird's Speak and Spell on the NES. Did any of you ever play this game? It used voice samples compressed for the NES, but like that ended up taking up so much space on the cartridge, as we know. So, but it's Big Bird being like, find letter B. It's ridiculous. And it's so slow, and it's really hard to kind of play from like a modern perspective. But yeah, that's sort of but games like this broke that mold, and I think most folks were trying to make things like this where we're secretly teaching you geography, right? I think that's the
Yeah,
I
I
don't
have a
think
bunch
we're
of
teaching them
entertainment
thievery,
games.
right? We're not teaching them to be like leading heists.
I don't think
Why
so.
not both?
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. Maybe a little bit of both. So we had Where in the World that was popular. So we had Where in the USA as Carmen Sandiego, and then Where in Time is Carmen Sandiego. So a lot of spin-offs here. 2 different live action, one of which I'm guessing is the game show that I remember. I looked it up because I was like, what was that theme song actually for? And then I kind of remembered there was like a live action. There were 2 animated shows. There were books, there were comics, there were board games. Also, I want to hear about this. A 3-part symphonic concert series? Tell me about that. Whatever you remember of what this consisted of.
Not much to know. Just read that it was a thing. So tried to find a little bit on it, but that wasn't really
Right.
the focus of what we were looking at. We were trying to. There's so much media. I went back and played a bunch of the old ones. It's actually quite available for. On archive.org. They call it the Vile Box, if anybody's interested. And Vile's the villain organization. And you can play all the old school games and even access the resources. They have um, like an atlas that came with that, the 1992 version, and actually like this, their archive, the Smithsonian archive research with little information on each music
Oh,
piece in
cool.
there as well. Um, the the symphonic series is mentioned pretty briefly, but as I said, it wasn't something we had to kind of focus this on a few things, and we definitely had the cartoon, the 1994 cartoon, was one of the main focal points, and the game was the most familiar thing that we had with the 1992 deluxe version.
Yeah. And we'll get into the music for these two things, but there's just not a lot, like, for it to be based on some of the media. I wondered if it was maybe like a Carmen Sandiego take on like orchestral, like what the rep was, like what are they actually playing in this. So that's definitely something to try to follow up on and see what's out there in terms of maybe like existing concert programs. What orchestras did they set it on, or orchestra, I guess this doesn't imply that it toured. So yeah. That's really, really interesting, especially given some of the recent work by like Stefan Greenfield
I know.
Casas.
Enter the Sekai Con right here. This is what we're talking
We're
about.
really thinking about this concertization impulse. Um, I can kind of, I mean, like a lot of these edutainment things turned into like on ice versions, right, where you can take your kid to see the figure skaters and they're dressed up in the costumes, like. So I feel like having a Carmen Sandiego concert series, 3 parts, implies that it did well. So there must be some kind of tie-in there where, like, I don't know, is there an actress that's
Research
playing Carmen?
possibilities.
Like, anyway, I'm intrigued by that. So, a thesis of sorts before we get to the walkthrough statement is that the music of the 1992 deluxe version of the video game. Oh yeah, so the 85 was then. I thought I had this in here. Maybe I do later. It was repackaged, and they sort of brought on a bigger team. So it had like more dedicated updates. It was a true remaster, graphics, new music, and everything. So the focus is going to be on that one, the deluxe version, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego, helpfully abbreviated WWCS, and of the 1994 animated series Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego, Wex, henceforth, both corroborate the power structures connoted in exoticist and imperialist narratives. It's like, whoa, all right, we took a turn. But it makes perfect sense for this. And this is what's so exciting about this, because, you're taking something that folks have maybe buried memories of this show, like, and kind of looking at it from a new angle and sort of recognizing like there were some things embedded in here that did not age as well. But there's also some really interesting play with agency for Carmen herself. It's not like we're sitting here saying good or bad value judgments on any of these things that are happening. It's just sort of an interesting reflection of a lot of these intertwining narratives. So the themes and narrative, this is the walkthrough, which is a paragraph, so it'll be a couple slides as we do. The themes and narrative in both media showcase their respective musical soundscapes and devices, address themes of exoticism permeating the series and its music, and depict Sandiego's complex character and oral agency. In the game, Sandiego looms in the background, while the player is immersed in a blend of Smithsonian recordings of the regions, visited in original cues by composer Janelle Adkisson. Adkisson. I always want to add an extra N in there. Adkisson. The animated series and its composers, Tom Worrall and John Campbell, treat Sandiego in a different manner. Specifically, we posit a link between Sandiego in the game, the show, and their title themes as an ironic set of musical chains binding Carmen sonically where she is otherwise free. To analyze these issues, we use multi-directional framework rooted in Black feminist epistemologies, allowing for an examination of Carmen Sandiego's class, ethnicity, and gender, rather than only focusing on her femininity. These overlapping experiences contextualize Sandiego's narrative and soundscape. To weave these theories together, we use several foundational texts in economics, musicology, feminist theory, and critical race theory as cornerstones for our argument. And y'all read the footnotes in this one when you go to read this one. This one really does have such a strong grounding in terms of how that literature was deployed without cluttering up the text. It reads very well, but there's this depth underneath it. That I felt was particularly well navigated. All of this is to ask a seemingly obvious question: who on earth is Carmen Sandiego? Seeming contradiction, Sandiego's equal parts edutainment, marketing powerhouse, and honorable thief. Her accompanying music supports her complicated role through exoticist underpinnings while binding her to past colonizers. That's pretty cool. So that take on it, I'm going to guess that, did you come into this with that in mind? Or was this something that sort of developed as you're looking at the music and then you start thinking about ways of framing it? Like, so chicken or the egg here? How did this side of it develop?
Whenever I'll answer the question because it's kind of, it was my lead on it. So, when I was watching the show, I was just taking notes and I was trying to sort of keep as open mind as possible. And as we were going through watching the show together and making notes, it just sort of, the themes just sort of kept on coming up, and how the music was deployed and how how she was portrayed on screen. And about, I want to say like a season into like taking notes, is there like 4 seasons, we stopped and finally like went back and watched the Mozart opera that has the big intro that Carmen Sandiego like borrows from the Act 1 finale from Abduction from, and everything just sort of clicked into place around that time. And I had just finished reading several texts on exoticism and alla turca, and it just made sense that all of that should be connected in this sort of subliminal, also like somewhat subversive way that we allow music to sort of color how we hear and relate to people.
Yeah, I love that. Usually, and I ask this because my own process tends to start with what game I'm looking at, what music. There's some kind of musical spur, right? That I'm like, okay, here I go. And then along the way, I start thinking about sort of how I'm connecting it out, like the zooming out process, and then generally that's where like then I'm going to deploy my disability studies or whatever identity research that I'm kind of adding in to what I'm doing. So, and in the case of my chapter in this very volume, there was almost like an anxious wanting to tie it into like 6 different things, and then I'm having a hard time like just balancing all of that, feeling a little out of my wheelhouse, and unsure how I was going to succeed in it, but feeling like that there needed to be a chapter on the Dragon Slayer stuff. So it's always going to be a weird chapter for me in terms of how I relate to that work, because it wasn't something that I like had this light bulb like oh, I'm going to write about gender and sexuality in Dragon Slayer. It was, I need to write about Dragon Slayer, better figure it out. So
okay, see, I wanted to write about women antagonists, and so Carmen Sandiego just came up, and then the music sort of followed afterwards, because I wanted to see how she was being treated.
Yeah, and the way we did this book was we actually put out a call for papers. Which was, and made sure it circled through some of the list serves and things like that. And the neat thing about that was there's a lot of people in this book that were not known to me, and there's a few that Lisa didn't really know either. We just got lucky with having a few folks, especially from abroad, send us really interesting abstracts to throw in. and then I have a few friends, certainly. y'all are in here, and Ryan and Karen and Andrew, and so there were some known names in the list as well. But I remember just thinking like, what a really interesting way to frame all of this, and so much more like. I don't want to say like it's deeper than one might expect, but kind of, right? For kind of like
fair.
a geography atlas game, like at the heart of it, there ends up being so much more under the surface when you start thinking about like, well, we're making a decision in terms of how we're portraying this character, and let's pick that apart a little bit and see. And particularly that you found, there's a very different portrayal in the game versus the TV show. So,
Yeah.
so fascinating. Yes, here we go. 1985 floppy disk. So yes, included with a print version of the World Almanac and Book of Facts. Yeah, we had like a huge volume, multi-volume encyclopedia set, and it lived on actually the TV cart. So it like sat under our TV growing up. And it had a very particular smell, and I would pull them out, and it had like the plates that were the full color plates, and a lot of the images throughout were not in color, so that those pages always stood out because they were on different paper and stuff. And when that type of thing moved onto a CD-ROM, and you're like, oh, we don't have to buy giant like 18 volume sets, of these encyclopedias. I wonder if my parents still have them, because that's fascinating.
My brother had gotten the almanac as a gift, actually. So that was the year I was born. So that we still had the floppy disk hanging around. So I do remember playing the old version and not doing that well right away. And plus, it was Super Nintendo had just come out too, so I wasn't as interested. But we did play the deluxe version at school, and they had versions of it on the computer lab that was there. So I played it a lot when I should have been learning typing at the time. So
I remember the one computer in the classroom those days, and it had like Oregon Trail and Number Munchers. Gosh, I loved that game. But I was secretly learning math. And then there was the one that was like you'd run a lemonade stand, and it was supposed to teach you basic economics. I was not as big into that as some of my classmates, but I liked Number Munchers because the little monsters were really cute, and you'd like learn your fractions or whatever. So such an interesting, again, a lot of these are being released by smaller or specialized developers and just don't have the same visibility, and yet have this ubiquity where a lot of folks played them growing up, but maybe didn't have a personal copy. So really interesting area. I'd really like to see more work on edutainment in general. I think some of these games are fascinating. I don't know if it's going to be more like in a game studies, like how much of them have a lot of dedicated music, but I'm just interested to read more of that. I think that's an interesting area. So I love the acronyms in this. We travel the earth as ACME, the agency to classify and monitor evildoers. Oh man, so we're agents of ACME, and then trying to capture agents from Vile, Villains International League of Evil, which makes me think of Dr. Horrible, the Evil League of Evil.
Yes.
The Joss Whedon. Kind of similar vibe there. Villains International League of Evil, and Sandiego leads that, and then has like underlings. So then the music in the 85 version, just monophonic synth MIDI, that's supposed to be MIDI, not MIDI cues, reminiscent of secret agent cues from James Bond films. That sort of style. But then the game, of course, gets this huge remaster, larger team. We get some voice acted dialogue, original music by Janelle Adkisson, and then it's combined with archival Smithsonian Folkways recordings. And I'm guessing because this was kind of like bundled with an almanac, the folks working on it were sort of thinking about making these places come to life, and let's see what we can. I don't know if they had to license the Folkways recordings or.
From what I know, that whenever they went and did the deluxe version, because that was sold separately, and it was planned to be sold to schools. That was the main thing, was to try to make it part of curriculum as much as possible. So the natural thing to do was to partner with the Smithsonian, and so the Folkways recordings were still pretty new at that time. They were still gathering things. Um, I don't want to say new, but they were pretty settled at that time. They had a pretty wide, um, healthy archive, and that's so they used that instead.
I have to look up when Frog Fractions came out. Andrew's saying he learned his numbers from Frog Fractions. 2012. Okay, so you learned your numbers in 2012. Congratulations, Andrew. Have you two played Frog Fractions? Oh.
No, I was talking with Andrew in the chat. I played Gizmos and Gadgets and some other like game where you were in the forest, in some sort of like creepy forest, and you had to like work your way through it using like fractions and ratios, building potions and stuff.
That sounds familiar, and I bet if I saw it, I would go, "Oh, that one."
I loved the music for that game, and it was on our like fat Mac back when they were shaped, like gigantic plastic apples.
Yeah, that's awesome. That does ring a bell. I wonder. I would probably recognize it. Oh my gosh, but y'all need to play Frog Fractions like post haste. There's a version on Steam.
I'll look it up.
Yeah.
Frog Fractions.
And then report back, because I'm very curious about your reactions. if you aren't familiar with it, don't look anything up. Find a time to play it, and then just like let me know what you think. That's all I'm gonna say, right, Andrew? That's the move. I will say that Ryan, we streamed it one week, and Ryan kind of sprung it on me. I don't remember if anybody else on the stream team knew it when we went to stream it. Maybe Julianne, but it broke my brain. It's pretty amazing piece of technology. Truly evergreen. Yeah, that's amazing. All right, so then the theme from the 1992, which we will listen to here, mingles pentatonic and harmonic minor modal exoticist motifs relating to Pan-Asian music, both Southeast and Southwest, respectively, without realizing any full ideas until Carmen makes an appearance. After her appearance, the music features a full Andalusian progression of 1-7-6-5, rounding out the last 10 seconds of the cue. This progression acts as a musical jacket of different exoticist motifs. Is it like a red trench coat of different exoticist motifs centering around
I was
Sandiego's
trying
job?
for the imagery there. Sometimes it's successful, sometimes it wasn't.
Yeah, no, I totally get that. Around Sandiego's job as the leader of a worldwide group of highly professional thieves, or secret agents, depending on how you view her. It as a surface level sonic signifier functional for its ability to elude. Okay, so I have to ask, when we do, this is one of those, I've read it, not said it. Is it Latinx or Latinx?
I've heard it pronounced a bunch of ways. My favorite is Latinx.
Okay. Because I've also seen where people just use the E ending, like Latine, as well, for like a non-specific gender. So Pan Latinx, maybe? Ness? Anyway, I will probably jump back and forth with pronunciations, but that's one that like I think almost works better written than saying it most of the time, but I also just don't know a lot of people that use it. So, anyway. Functional for its ability to elude Pan-Latinx-ness, but the character is recognizable without it. So it's important here that we are portraying Carmen as not from a particular country. So there's a lack of specificity here that we'll talk about in a minute. But let's hear this, all of these signifiers getting mashed into one thing. doesn't have the thing on the... Oh, there we go. The O. Did I grab the wrong link?
Actually, you think this isn't the one from the version?
Yeah, this is the wrong long play. I have the right one. Hold on. Let me jump ahead a little because it's this one, right? Let me jump.
Correct. There it is.
All right, let me jump.
That was a cool one, though.
I don't know why I used I must have copy pasted the wrong one. This is the one. That was also Broderbund though. Here we go. There it is. I really like how she like sneaks out from behind the window. I want to arrange that. That's like that's quite a performance, isn't it? All right, let me jump back to a different slide here. Yeah, apparently I grabbed the wrong the wrong thing. It can be, when there's multiple versions, especially of PC software, it can be sort of hard to find the right thing. All right, so the Acme cue features a new synthesized mimicking of an Indian or Pakistani pungi. Is that the correct? I'm assuming. Performing a quick scalar run back and forth several times along the fifth mode of harmonic minor, which is meant to evoke the exoticness of the locales in which the player is about to travel. I think that's what this is specifically linked to. Is that it? So it's just a quick little stinger cue that tells us that we're going to be traveling, and you can see this is that kind of classic PC game HUD, I guess we could call it, where we've got our little phone here, and then we have our little evidence dossier in the bottom and a notepad, and then kind of the the place we're investigating. So a lot of these kind of point and clicky adventure games from this era. And then the Smithsonian Folkwaves recordings are used to set the environmental tone using traditional musics of the region in question. So there's a lot of spots in this is a long play, so we can kind of jump around and hear a few different ones.
And this has a long end note attached. Wow. So we'll say that.
It'll give you these little intro sequences where you're adding stuff to your notes. I'm going to just jump around a little bit. So here we are. Mexico City. The travel agent's funny. Enjoy your travel. Little sneaky theme there.
That means you're on the right path.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, here we are in Rome. So we really get a lot of different places. So we can hear that there's kind of two main threads here, that there's the traditional musics from the Smithsonian Folkways recordings, and then we have the newly composed themes to kind of set the secret agenty flavor. And the player's collecting clues. If they collect enough, they'll catch a criminal in the 6th or 7th locale and then bring those criminals to an international court in Cairo or Singapore, where they get to hear the final part of Adkison's main theme. And the game, even if you, after a certain number of these, you can catch Sandiego. And then, is this the one where she has the witty line about like, she doesn't look good in horizontal stripes, like they do nothing for me. So
Yep.
The stripes do nothing for me. Yeah.
And so I don't think I'll be in them long. And so she escapes again, and the game just continues indefinitely, even if you catch Sandiego. So do like the clues and the cases repeat then? I imagine like
They're on a randomizer.
Oh, okay.
So you get them. You'll go to different places. They'll mix up the things, and then I want to say it's 30 to 50 is the range of cases solved. They release all the prisoners. There's a big jailbreak. So if Carmen's in there at that time, then she's part of the prisoners that are released in that point. So it resets.
Okay.
As you move through the game.
Yeah. Even a little bit of randomization can go so far in replayability, right? Because especially for a younger kid playing, it's going to feel substantially different enough, which is pretty fun. And what's neat here, Carmen gets voice acting. Oh, there it is. I'm afraid stripes do nothing for me. I don't think I'll be wearing them for long. Like gets a quip, gets to speak at her trial here. And then this becomes evident that we will never win. We're just always going to be chasing Sandiego and the other criminals. And Sandiego is a perpetual villain with a lot more agency than the player here. Has a true voice. She's looming in the background, only showing herself in the opening credits and after a long playthrough. And File and Sandiego get an original theme from Adkison, and Sandiego is the only character who speaks with a sounding voice of the. There's the people you call on the phone on the villain side. Yeah. So she's getting some agency here by having a spoken voice. I didn't find the spot since it was a long, several hour long play. I didn't find the spot where she has this line. I would have pulled it, but I was doing this late last night. But she does get her own music and her own moment to shine with the voice acting. So then the TV show from '94, the classic edutainment. And here we get referencing Sarah Benet Weiser's 2007 Kids Rule, Nickelodeon and Consumer Citizenship, where that consumer citizenship piece is this concept of hyper-capitalist consumer citizenship that these shows are helping to cultivate. So for those of us who haven't read this, what exactly is consumer citizenship? I know that you have footnotes on it and stuff, but...
She makes a few claims. One of her claims is the idea of the connotation for animation being geared towards children, and this idea that children are passive sponges to which they absorb everything and they filter nothing. And that book really examines that and refutes it. And she comes up with this idea that she's troubling the idea of what makes somebody a citizen and how you can enact that. And she uses television to do that, specifically Nickelodeon. But she talks about, from a marketing perspective, how children are sort of this perfect consumer base because they consume the media, they get their parents or their guardians to consume the media, and then when they age out, they retroactively consume the media for nostalgic purposes.
Mm-hmm.
And she argues that what you choose to consume, especially for a child, is very powerful, because it's not like you can vote. You can't skip school. You can't get a job. Well, of course, that's being rolled back now. But theoretically, you couldn't get a job if you were 10, but you could choose what you watched on TV or what you asked your parents to get for you, or how you chose to spend your time outside of the constraints that are placed upon you as a child. So what you consume, in fact, becomes an outgrowth of your citizenship, as limited as it may be for a child, or really anybody that doesn't have traditional land owning voting citizenship rights the way that we kind of think of a citizen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and even just in terms of identity formation and articulation, that the idea of the things that I consume somehow constructing how I see myself, or there's going to be plenty of things I don't watch that I don't connect to in the same way. But if I'm sort of cultivating my taste,
is part of that process
yeah, that process of cultivating my taste, and then maybe sharing it. Last night on the stream, Ryan and I were saying what are the top shows of your that you're watch this show. And I was saying one of mine is Call the Midwife. I'm always everybody needs to watch Call the Midwife. It's some of the best storytelling about women ever. That there's just these shows that you tie to a significant part of your life. And when you're a child, you're not just looking at everything that's out there. So those connections can get pretty strong.
Yeah.
And there's also a piece here. When I see consumer citizenship, I'm also thinking about the child directed marketing in the commercials for these shows as well.
Yeah, she spends a great deal of time talking about that, especially in the transition from the Reagan era into the 90s, when you have this big outcry over needing to change television and really children's-based marketing, period, that needed to have some sort of moral or education type statement post 1991 or so, that wasn't present in, let's say, the Hot Wheels car cartoon show that was basically just a series of advertisements for Hot Wheels and so on.
Yeah, or the He-Man
type
stuff. There's I don't know if either of you were Community fans, but there's a later season episode where Jeff is having he's turning 40 and he's having a moment, and so he goes into this kind of internal dream sequence where he's basically in a He-Man cartoon, but it's calling out that they cut in actual 80s style commercials with the action figures to make it seem like he's actually in this child cartoon, but he's also then reacting to it and then sort of being oh, is this whole show about selling the action figure? It's a good episode. That show had some really nice meta commentary moments on just media tropes, and especially through Abed's character, because he was always commenting on, we're in a TV show, haha, and everyone is yeah, Abed, we get it. So yeah, I see consumer citizenship, and I also think about the way in which folks are being raised to enter a certain type of consumer behavior landscape, right?
Yeah, she does an excellent job in that book unpacking a lot of that, and she talks about the how you're raised to kind of look through certain issues in a certain way, how this ties into the big girl power movement of the 90s, and it's if you're looking for a gateway into Sarah Benaviser's work, it's a great gateway, because from there she jumped off. Since she's written about a lot of neoliberalism and popular feminism, consumer-based feminism, and white feminism, and how that sort of how these power dynamics kind of blend in and peep out in ways that don't seem obvious, but once you start looking at it, it's really oh wow. It wasn't terribly clever of them to do it that way at all, sort of
right.
sort of thing.
So this is a landscape here too, in terms of this show's participating in kind of a whole movement happening in the 80s and 90s in terms of children's entertainment. And it was being, as I remember, this stuff was not, cordoned off from the kind of regular cartoons. Like, this was mixed in. These types of shows were just another thing in the lineup. It would be on at like 3:30, and then after that there would, I don't know, be the Sonic the Hedgehog show or whatever.
Yeah. It wasn't just relegated to that like sort of early morning, like Sunday spot around like other, let's say, more overtly educational programs. It was part of, like you just said, this big movement to improve or enhance programming.
And of course, then there's also always the like public television side of this too, having its own lineup and the things that they would cultivate. So stuff like this could also appear on those networks as well. But I remember it being there wasn't like a strict division between one or the other. In the show, the locations, kind of similarly to the use of the folkways here, we are trying to depict that we are in different locations, but at least with the Smithsonian Folkways recordings, we're using actual recordings of traditional musics from whatever area. Here, there's a lot of conflation happening, which is kind of a common exoticist tool or trope in general, that the same gestures can be used to signify multiple others, so long as there are sort of other elements contextualizing it. So music for China and Japan end up being the same, but sections in Africa feature heavy percussion. So we're implying drumming in one space, and so you would know, like, I'm not in Japan, I'm in Africa, but then all of Africa gets the drumming, right? So we end up just painting everything with one brush.
With the same broad brush.
Yeah. The centerpiece of the show is the theme song, which I will not pull up, just because I think the copyright strike potential on the cartoons are likely to be higher. But luckily, we have sheet music for this, and we can sing it. Or I don't know if this one will play, but the centerpiece of the show is the theme song, which is actually an arrangement of Mozart's Singt dem großen Basse Lieder. My German pronunciation's terrible, but I can at least read German. In Act 1 of Objection from the Seraglio, 1782, a piece explicitly in the Alaturka or Turkish style. So, like, here's a nice connection point here that, yes, we have exoticist gestures everywhere, including in the source material of the theme song, which is just a retexting of the... Do we have any insight as to what made them choose Mozart? I mean, you posit some really interesting connections between the opera here and then Carmen's character, but...
I'm going to guess the composers were on a yacht tossing a ball. No, I'm just kidding.
Because composers totally can afford yachts.
I can't find anything concretely stating it. There was I found this like random article talking about how the song arrangement was popular, but nothing expressly saying we chose this because if I had to make sort of like a random guess, I know that the because it's being marketed expressly as edutainment, and in the 90s, the Mozart effect would have been like a big deal.
Yeah.
I would hazard a guess to say that there could be a whole like, well, let's put some Mozart in there because it makes...
Which is a little later, but yeah. That's a good guess. So maybe that's a piece of it there. Because, like, musically, there's nothing in just the notes that makes me go, oh, of course, right? It's kind of an interesting choice. So the music in Alla Turca has rapid forward figurations, large amounts of percussion, kind of representing the Janissary bands, loud volume, especially the wind section, and frequent quick melodic ornamentation and a simple harmonic rhythm. So those are some of the gestures that define the Alla Turca. Of course, there's been a lot of work on this, but a lot of the exoticism work kind of starts in European art music and sort of with Alla Turca as one of the the first like real sensations of exoticism, and then as Timothy Taylor and Jonathan Bellman and all of those folks, Derek Scott, have looked into, then the gestures are surprisingly malleable and get kind of applied to any other we want to do, especially once you get that augmented second in there, man. That's just like anywhere can be the augmented second. Which is where my work comes in on Egypt, because that's a big one for Egypt. Augmented second? Oh, we're in ancient Egypt. So
that fifth mode of the harmonic minor scale that you have there.
Mm-hmm. We love that interval. So look at this beautiful transcription. So this is the original with English. So sing to the mighty Pasha, resound, fiery song, and let the shore reverberate with the joyful sound of our songs. With the joyful sound of our songs, Waft towards him, flow more gently, billowing waters. So dun 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 dun. So, and I'm not the singer. What was your voice type, by the way, TJ? You mentioned
lyric soprano.
Lyric soprano. Soprano, sing this part. There you go.
I
will not make you sing on stream. But yes, we get a choral moment here, and that is the basis of our theme. Pretty straightforward in terms of mostly just retexting, right?
Yeah, the fun fact, when we started watching this, I did go around singing the gospel rock version from the show, like for at least like a solid week. It's just such an earworm.
It is. And that could be a piece of why they picked it too. Maybe they just thought this tune was catchy, The monetization of the Mozart effect from their original study. maybe they got a cut. I don't know. They probably didn't. Let's be real. I actually didn't know who did the Mozart effect study. I know that what we have shown is, like a lot of these things, there's no magic pill with raising your kids when it comes to exposing them to stuff like this. It turns out that there have been follow-up studies that just actively listening to music with your kid, it could be anything. I could be listening to death metal with my kid, and there's just something about like sharing that experience that's good for the brain development. Like, it does not have to be a certain kind of music. You can do it with Dolly Parton or whoever, and it's kind of just good for the inner. It's like the reading to them too, that like and speaking to your child constantly. They know that there's no matter how much like edutainment, Sesame Street stuff they're watching, if they aren't getting that direct interactive speech from adults, there's only so much that the TV can like fill in for. So it's nice to do both. nice to like actually talk to them and read to them and constantly try to use language, where you're like, oh, what's that in the sky? And then they're like, airplane. And you're like, cool. Yeah, that's an airplane. We see a car and she goes, car. And I go, what sound does a car make? And she goes, vroom, vroom. It's like we're learning every day. We're putting new words in the pile of the vocabulary. So, Mozart effect.
Practical sound studies. There you go.
Exactly. Yeah. So like musically, she's heard all kinds of different things. She does associate the violin with me, which is pretty cool. She'll like if she sees a violin somewhere, she'll point at it and go violin, and then mama.
Aww.
Which is pretty fun. 1993. All right. So in time for the TV show. For sure. Which would be in time for this transcription. So I guess that makes sense. Yeah, so we have this beautiful transcription that we basically just retypeset for the book. I retypeset everybody's because some folks were using finale, some folks were using Sibelius, and like I wanted it to match across chapters. There's no reason it needed to be done because like everybody that handed in these types of transcriptions for their chat, they were beautifully done. Like Dominic had really nice ones for the DuckTales chapter, but I just wanted the font to be the same, like, you know, just like the I just wanted stuff to look the same. So yeah, so I ended up, that was such like an unnecessary extra step, but but these were fun. So now we get to kind of Carmen as a character, bearing both male and colonial gazes, and being able to sort of tease out the differences here and not just sort of collapse her character to just a single domain here. And that also then adding in the idea that she's the antagonist. Also, I like this phrasing where you say further complicates the looking relations on and around her. So Carmen is intelligent, never takes a life, even though her heists cause harm. Like she's stealing stuff, right? She's causing harm. Yeah. But she's not like attacking you. It's always about like this, like I'm playing 3D chess. I'm going to outsmart you. I'm going to outwit you. I also want you to chase me. Like you get the sense that it wouldn't be fun for her if she's not being chased.
Yeah. Likes the sensationalism of it all.
Yeah. And like a intellectual gamesmanship, you know, to it of just like, yeah, come find me. So never taking life, even though her heists cause harm. She is the catalyst for all the action. We never learn her nationality. We never learn anything about her ethnicity. And y'all posit that this is kind of about appealing to a broader audience. Or maybe just cutting corners so that we don't have to get too specific.
I think there are a lot of ways that you could probably take it. One could be that the people that created her character had no understanding of Latinx ethnicities and just sort of dumped it all into like one kind of melding pot. But the another was slightly different ways that they were just trying to appeal to a broader audience rather than, it's sort of like the reason Dora the Explorer works. She's not specifically at like one country of origin, or at least like her earlier animation stuff wasn't, that if you like sort of posit sort of a pan-Latinist identity, then you're able to appeal to anybody within those ethnicities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But it's enough to make her exotic to the mainstream. Yeah. And I think there's also a piece too that because she's sort of this high level, I guess, thief, you know, she's working in a very like international cosmopolitan space, and the idea that might flatten some of the like nationality, ethnicity, specificity here too, because she's kind of like transcending the specific origin in favor of this more international outlook or something. I think that's maybe deeper than it needs to be for this setup, but I think there's something to that too, that like she's a globetrotter, so like it doesn't matter where she came from because she's from everywhere now. She goes everywhere.
Yeah, there's sort of a like we don't see color type feel to it. Yeah.
Also feels very early 90s. We had a lot of that kind of multicultural, like kind of figuring out how to negotiate that in media. You know, it's like, do you just say, oh, we're all people and it's fine, and like they're, you know, just try to kind of sublimate difference, or do you like acknowledge and recognize difference but celebrate difference? Like there's different approaches to that, and I remember seeing different versions of that in different media as well.
Oh yeah.
So there were times where it was like, here's the differences between us. It's not like we're going to pretend that we don't notice that we look different or something, but oh, we're the same underneath, you know, like especially in kids media, I'm thinking about like how they frame introducing difference. And in here, like they're not really making a case about it, right? Like it's this backdrop.
No, not until like the fourth season where we have like kind of a flashback arc with Carmen where she's trying to figure out who her biological parents are. And so you get like a lot of backstory with her, and
Interesting.
they use it as a I think a time to discuss like being in an orphanage and so on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Spoilers. I know. It's like
I
it's
had
30
no
years.
idea.
But,
I don't think I ever saw that far.
she was raised as an orphan, everybody. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's all helps us understand why she starts stealing everything. I don't know.
They make sort of like a loose connection that way, but not quite. She's like, what is her backstory exactly? In the show, she used to be an Acme detective.
Oh.
And ran across a more violent version of what would be like her Carmen Sandiego, some dude kind of stealing stuff, and she sort of that becomes messy, and she sort of takes inspiration from him in some weird way and decides to do it better.
Yeah, do it her way. Better. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, this is interesting. I'm not sure I understand your comment, Andrew, especially with the Schitt's Creek spelling at the end. I haven't seen that show. Is that a reference to Schitt's Creek? Look at an orange. I think I lack the cultural literacy here for that. You might have to explain it to me like I'm 5. Anyway. Carmen. I had no idea that was her backstory. That's really interesting. And it sort of makes sense that like we have like stories about dirty cops turning into kind of some of the best criminals, right? Because it's like they know the system. Right, they know how to get around it. So that doesn't surprise me. She used to
be the best Acme detective ever, and now she just wants to challenge
she was
the Acme detective.
And now she's been turned to the dark side.
Yeah, I don't remember the finer details of when exactly that happened. It happens in like the 4th season. They spend the bulk of it like going into her past and how she becomes a villain and so on.
So I know I'm not getting enough sleep because I'm playing too much Zelda, but Andrew, you are really like I'm not following you. I get the navel gaze pun. But I'm just in a sea of confusion in the comments section over there. So we'll get back to Carmen here. Yeah, so she's trying to tempt these Acme folks to chase her. And the best way to do this is it's not just, hey, I'm going to steal some things. It's like everything gets stolen kind of along a theme. So like you can connect the dots like, oh, she stole this and this and this. Like it's like she's leaving these clues to help catch her. And she never tries to harm those trying to capture her. She's not setting like bodyguards with guns. You know, this isn't like a John Wick movie.
Yeah. She doesn't destroy anything that she takes either.
I would love to see that actually, where somebody does like one of those fake trailers with high production value where it's like a gritty remake of Carmen Sandiego where she does have that. Or they frame it like super film noir with like the Acme agent chasing her. That would also be okay because she has the trench coat to pull that off. So those are the 2 gritty remakes I want to see of the show. In the 94 show, The Main Detectives, I remember this one, the teenagers, Ivy and Zach. Why are teenagers professional detectives? Do we know that? Does the show tell us? Is this some kind of an internship for college credit? Like...
No, they're literal teenagers. They're just, they're like
or is it
90s kids with tons of disposable time and apparently income.
Are they like a Doogie Howser situation? Are they like child prodigy detectives?
They sort of imply that they're prodigies.
There you go. Even though the things they're solving are like basic connections that the kids watching should be able to like put together.
Now.
It's brilliant. No one would have connected.
No one would have connected them.
Certainly not the 30-year-olds who've been at this for many more years than
Certainly
you.
not Carmen leaving them literal letters and things addressed directly to them to push them along. Certainly none of that either.
Maybe, here's my conspiracy theory. Maybe Carmen actually isn't a real thief, and she's just training the teenage detectives to be better acting agents. Maybe it's a really
genius head of training.
Yeah, she works for HR, and it's just a really elaborate training module.
No.
You just melted my brain, Dana.
Oh. They're on like a 3-year orientation program. They don't even know. They're just trying to get these credits so they can have their, like, detective certification renewed every year.
Mm-hmm. They have no idea. They think they're solving actual crimes. Because, like, we're really not going to let the 15-year-olds solve.
Right. Plus, they're like, their boss is an AI. So you're just kind of like, who wrote that? Like,
interesting.
What's the goalkeeper?
ChatGPT is their boss. ChatGPT has existed longer than we know.
Oh my God.
Anyway, Sandiego's minions have pun names, so we know I'm a fan. We have Abe L. Body, Elevator, Sarah Nade. And they're kind of the slapstick because Carmen's cool. Carmen has a trench coat.
Right. She can't do slapstick stuff, so her cronies get to because she's too cool for that kind of
You'd
thing.
think she would get other people who are competent and cool, but again, this is lending credence to the idea that it's a training program because they're easy to catch.
Yeah,
they're easy to catch. They lead to
right. She
hijinks.
needs incompetent middle management.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they lead to hijinks and shenanigans for the teenage detectives to have, we're making progress. We're catching these minions.
Maybe all of her like minions are just people trying to catch a break on their reels for an acting gig.
Yeah. I mean, with names like Serenade, that's definitely a stage name.
Yeah. Or like I played Serenade in Carmen Sandiego season 2, episode 3.
Carmen. Oh, that's not the right button to move that forward. This is. Hello. So just like we had kind of 2 major threads of cues, that's at least consistent in the game, where we had the Smithsonian tracks and then we had the newly composed stuff. Here, we have sort of the pan-exoticist signifiers, like where we just conflate everybody, right? Pentatonic scales for Asian countries, check. Drumming for, quote, native or, quote, tribal cultures. Pan flute for Native Americans. Irish instrumentation if we're in English landscapes. We always kind of have these same gestures. So we have these oral postcards, and that's one side. Or a lot of the original underscoring derives in some form from the title song. It's like very, very, it's not even leitmotivic. It's just like unithematic at this point. See what I did there? Abduction from the Sandiego.
I like it.
So now
this is what we should have done our subtitles as for the art.
I always have cheesy subtitles. The choice of Mozart is fitting and ironic here. So this, without trying to get to any sort of composer intention, because we don't know, we don't have sources on it, but there are some interesting parallels to draw here that Mozart's opera has Pasha Selim as the ruler of the house, who's positioned as Turkish as the antagonist. Selim is the ruler, but also a named character that gets the least amount of stage time and does not sing, which Taylor and some others have basically said the character is so powerful that he just doesn't even bend to the conventions of opera. Like, I'm so powerful I don't have to sing, which I really like that framing. Because that's not...
Yeah, it was definitely like a glass half full type way. Cause it's so easy to go the other way where it's just like, well, they don't have any agency. He's not even given a voice.
Yeah. And in opera, when we are about the voice. So very strange to have a named character that doesn't sing. Absolutely. And there's other moments where I would kind of agree with that statement that a silent character in opera can actually be really powerful. I'm thinking of one of the things, I almost wrote my dissertation on Satyagraha by Philip Glass, and each act is presided over by a figure from history that is just there, doing like pantomime in the background, to kind of draw a connection between whoever it is and Gandhi. And like the third act is presided over by Martin Luther King. And so like we're drawing a connection between King drawing inspiration from the truth force and the nonviolent protest. And he's just there. Doesn't sing, doesn't interact, for the most part. It can be really powerful when used well. But yeah, I liked this. Like, so powerful. Like, I don't need to sing. I don't care that this is an opera. I don't need to sing. I refuse. Which is not how I read like Henry Higgins in My Fair Lady being more like Sprechstimme. Like, you know, he kind of acts his role instead of singing it. You know, sometimes when that happens in musical theater, like I don't necessarily read that as a display of power on the part of that character.
Yeah.
I often, or especially movie adaptations of musicals like Sweeney Todd, where very good adaptation from a lot of filmic standpoints, but in terms of like the vocal performances, you know, we're doing a lot more like acting the song than singing the song, which is not ineffective. It's just not always what I'm looking for in like a musical adaptation. But we want to have or I'm not even going to talk about Les Mis. I refused to engage with Les Mis, and we wanted the big names. We made them sing for like 8 hours a day.
Oh no.
I don't know if you've seen it or if you know anything about it, but like these poor actors were not taking care of their vocal mechanisms, because like everything, the director was very like everything has to be live sound, so they would just do take after take after take. So they're like, they didn't just dub it. Why wouldn't you just dub it? Or get a good recording and then so then poor Anne Hathaway singing what's the big like Dream to Dream or whatever, like her big like romantic moment where she's singing her heart out. She's crying for real in the take and trying to sing. And it's like, oh, anyway. Oh, I like this thread here. Carmen Sandiego's in a person. It is Crime, Andragogy and Research Methodology in Sandiego. So she's based in Sandiego. She's been telling us the whole time. We just don't bother to look there. It's just a coincidence with her name. Anyway, so a character, singing or not singing, can actually be kind of an interesting... That silence can be a really interesting signifier. It can do the opposite as well. But in this case, we're using Taylor's framing, and the theme song and the abduction chorus, which are, of course, the same melody, are each about their respective rulers. So Pasha, Salim, and Sandiego. And they're kind of the puppet masters of the narratives, but they're not there all the time. They just kind of, they're just this force that's omnipresent, but they're not necessarily on stage or screen. So I like this comparison here, that also Sandiego in the show is avoiding, well, and in the game too, avoiding traditional sonic treatment. Salim because he doesn't sing and doesn't have any personal music. Carmen because she does not have theme music, as opposed to Acme. And it is as if she too were so powerful that she can refuse to engage with the rest of the soundscape. Similarities between them in terms of their characterization, the fact that they have these minions, but there are some key differences between the two of them, which we get into here. Given Sandiego's status as antagonist/other, it is no wonder that the music for Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego is equally complex and mysterious. The title theme arrangement from Abduction, already cloaked in the exoticist alla turca style, is further appropriated by the incorporation of gospel and rock styles. The theme song, because you got to make it like a 90s kids show, you got to have like a rock basis here. The theme song arrangement essentially glorifies two thieves while wearing dual sonic disguises. Salim is settler colonizer who steals women and presumably land and resources, and Carmen is overt as a professional thief. This arrangement offers a dual sonic disguise because it references Salim and utilizes Black American music, the gospel, and rock elements to describe the antagonist/colonizer. Combine this intertextual irony with the show's premise, a globe-trotting other who steals from exotic locals, and suddenly Where on Earth is Carmen Sandiego becomes a colorful, labyrinthian cluster of exoticist tropes. Wow! How did we get here? That's so good. That was definitely a moment reading the chapter where I was like, dang. The way that you tie this back together is so elegant.
Thank you.
That's great. Now, here's where we can see some of these. There are some secondary musical themes, but most of the cues derive pretty overtly from the title theme. So we have the intro title song, and then we have this little kind of minor hued version when it's applied to Carmen. And then we have this danger theme, which is modulate. We got a fourth there, so we have a little bit of change in the intervals, but it's following that contour like in a way that's pretty unmistakable when you hear it, I think. And I don't know if my MIDI keyboard I think is not a performance keyboard now. I just replaced it like not too long ago. So y'all can sight sing this for yourselves. But you can see like this is what most of the underscoring is, right? Like there's some kind of little quotation or it's somehow derived from the theme song.
Oh, yeah.
How would you describe anything that isn't derived from the theme song? Because it's not like it's 100%.
As those exoticist little calling cards, I mean, if they're not using the San Diego theme, which is usually when they're talking about them, the danger themes are like act outs right before commercials or coming back in. But the otherwise, they're going to different places. They usually visit 3 to 4 different places a show, it seems like. So they're constantly using one of the like 3 or 4 cues they have, it seems like, for the same few locations that they have.
Very compact.
So
it's not like we even really have any other like, oh, this is more atmospheric, kind of filler underscore. It's this or it is the exoticist cues.
They have some little ways of like mixing it up, and it's very keyboard heavy, and these are the themes that prevail, though, like the ones that I guess act as like recognizable musical bits. There's plenty of unheard melodies throughout, but these are the parts that usually come up and catch your ear, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm.
Even when we were listening to it and we'd find a theme that we're like, I don't think that's a San Diego or the danger theme. We'd go back and listen to it and we're like, oh, no, it's a San Diego theme. It's just been augmented. Yeah. Or no, it's the danger theme. It's just been like diminished and raised to like some weird key when everybody's playing it on like the tin whistle or something. It was sort of amazing that like the variations that they had on it. Some obviously hearkening back, and some you just had to listen to it and go, oh, and this is the same thing, just at like 30 beats per minute, or what have you. Yeah.
So instead of, we can talk a lot about limited animation. Again, He-Man comes up. Limited animation, reuse of either sequences or backdrops or whatever. And the corners you cut when you're trying to produce like a weekly show, especially in the days when we did 22 episode seasons of things.
And before we had digital cells, where you're still using cell technology. So that was...
Where my boy Don Bluth from the Dragon's Lair chapter, he was not a fan of the limited animation. It's kind of one of the things that made him found his own studio. And then in a funny turn of events, Dragon's Lair was so popular in the arcade, they made a one season of a like children's cartoon and they used limited animation because it wasn't his studio that was asked to produce it. I think they just got, permission to do a show, but then it was kind of funny because it's like, oh, you had this whole thing about limited animation, and then the Dragon's Lair cartoon uses limited animation. Oh, well, but so like in with that sort of, you can view it as not lazy, but just like rushed, right? Like we're doing things on a very tight constraint of time and budget. I think you could make an argument that that's like happening musically too, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. Just it's sort of like what you just said, the fast pacedness, the turnaround that you'd have to do to create a show like that. You just you'd have to be efficient.
I notice that in anime all the time, where I'm like, the same. They've got their stock 4 or 5 cues for that show, and you hear them come up again in similar scenarios over and over again.
Yeah. I think like for my money, one of the shows that I hear that like I feel like has done a really good job with that, still kind of keeping it a little fresh, is One Piece. Though they've used some of the same theme work over all of their 1,000 episodes.
They also have 1,000 episodes.
They
so
do.
Maybe they've had time to introduce a new theme here and there as they go.
Just a few though. The rest of it's all they keep a lot of the themes similar, but it doesn't sound like overused.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm still trying to. I have a bit of an anime hang up, let's say, from undergrad. As a Japanese minor, I wasn't like an anime person coming in. I just thought the language sounded interesting to study. I kind of flipped a coin between Russian and Japanese because I was like, oh, it's cool that like we have this at school. So I ended up in Japanese with a lot of very passionate anime fans, some of whom kind of ruined some things for me. So it's taken years. My husband has been working on his Japanese throughout the pandemic, where he'll watch stuff without subtitles now to just like continue improving. And so I've been exposed to a bunch of anime, but like in terms of ones that I've actually enjoyed, I'm very basic. Like I thought Love is War. I've seen the first season of that and I was like, that's cute. But also, why don't they just say they like each other? And he's like, that's the whole point of the show.
Right? No, I have a similar hang up after my master's thesis. I just had to take like 4 years off from watching it, and even now I'm very, very picky about what I watch.
Yeah. Joe is not picky only because he's using stuff to like improve. Like if it's something he cares about, he's either saving it until he feels like he has enough command of the language, or he'll watch it with the subtitles. But he watches like just every, like even the trash that comes out, like he's like, oh, and just to have that constant practice. So there's some that I look up and I'm like, what is happening right now?
What is going on?
Because I'm like not listening. I'm like working on an arrangement or something. I just look up and I'm like seeing fan service. I'm like, cool. What?
I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, like what are we doing? Like there's one, and I don't know the name of it, and if any anime fans want to like correct me, but there was one that he was watching that kind of cracked me up, where it was like dueling maid cafes that had like very specific themes, and it was like a gritty crime show, and it was like almost Yakuza-y, where they were like getting into gunfights with like the rival maids at the maid cafes. That one I was like, what is that's one where I kept looking up being like, weren't we in a maid cafe a minute ago? What's happening? So the idea of reuse of these musical themes, like there's all of the production deadline and the real pressures on having to have reuse. But I like the idea too. The flip side of that is that we sort of tie these cues in a leitmotivic fashion to a specific setting, a specific, mood that we're trying to convey. So that happens in anime, that happens in children's cartoons. And here, because everything is derived from the theme song with the lyrics, whereas Carmen Sandiego, it's a way of taunting us and making her omnipresent, which I really like that read of it. It's like, it can be both. It can be both like a cost-cutting, time-saving measure, and this sign that she's always there.
Yeah. It's a smart branding move.
Yeah.
Win-win. Efficient for everybody involved, and it helped enforce the brand of the show.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when I teach stuff like leitmotif to like non-major undergrads, a lot of them are like, I don't know that I would recognize, a theme being applied to someone. I'm like, you might be surprised. Like, you're probably just not consciously attending to it.
Yeah.
But I'm like, some of these get used so much, you kind of can't help but like make that association, even if you're not doing so very, like, once you stop and listen for it, then you're probably going to notice it. But, we always use like Star Wars as an example there of like, oh, here's Rey's theme or whatever. It's going to show up when we're talking about Rey. Got to be current, do the new ones.
Like using the Anna Russell Ring summation of like 30 minutes comedy routine where she goes over all the leitmotifs and bring them back up. If you haven't seen it, I definitely suggest it.
Nice. So, to conclude, y'all managed to do a lot here in like a compact chapter. And this is one where, again, obviously I served as a half of the editing team here, and there was that piece of it. I don't remember. I feel like you both, because you had probably been doing so much back and forth with each other before Lisa and I ever saw it, I don't remember having a very intense process with you. I remember the comments just being kind of like little clarification thing. Like, am I misremembering because I've just blocked out the entire, like, I feel like our process back and forth was pretty simple and conversational.
No, I thought it was pretty simple. We actually, I won't speak for Brent there. I was like,
Brent's like, I hated them.
I was waiting for like to get back like the edits where you're just like, you need to rewrite this. Like, I was waiting for something like that, and then before you knew it, we were like, well, now it's off to press. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, we had a lot of strength.
It was a really nice process.
Had a lot of strength coming in, and luckily, like, I think it helped that Lisa and I sort of had different specialties, right? So even though I joke about my anime allergy, like, I definitely have the Japanese language experience, and I'm kind of aware, at least more secondhand, from my husband. So like, there were things in the anime chapters that Lisa's like, I don't work on anime. Like, that was totally not her. She's like, there's other pieces of this that I can speak to. But, there was like a moment, and I don't even remember because we had several anime chapters where, somebody was talking about moe. And like, I was like, we need to define this a little bit because we're going to have people that don't have a background in like what that is, and the way they were using it, like, sort of implied like a specific reading on it instead of like, no, the general concept, so it was like, we have to define this in a footnote, that kind of a thing. Just thinking about, like, the press had told us they wanted to market this for a more kind of general audience in terms of not general, not like popular press general audience, but the idea that like an undergrad course could use it, and the language would be mostly accessible, even if there's key terms and some things that are a little bit more in depth or specific, that overall we should think about having an accessible tone, which Lisa was like, I'm good with that. That's very much how she attempts to write. I would say I also want to make sure my language reads well and has good flow, and also has that sort of accessibility angle. So that was very much a thing in our book, was just making sure that like it's super clear, and it's super clear because we have audiences coming from like here. You know, so when the animation person picks up this book, doesn't really know the video games, are they going to have a sense of like, what is an RPG if somebody mentions that? Like, is that defined at first use so that somebody kind of knows what they're getting into? And
that's part of why like our endnotes were so long, was because I had in my personal writing experience, I'm usually asked to go back and like define this term, things that are maybe considered like you just said, perhaps taken for granted if you're researching feminism, but not well understood if you, let's say, went through like a more traditional music like route. So we came in, I think when we turned in the draft to you, it already had like a ton of like footnotes and endnotes in it.
I remember us cutting it down just a little bit,
Yeah,
just in terms of like trying to make it fit a bit more. So I remember trimming a bit of the
yeah,
language in the footnotes, but still thinking like, no, this is really valuable. And I think what you've done well that I think is very hard to do is knowing when not to digress in the main text. Because a lot of people would have tried to cram that into the main text, and then we would have been like, no, that should be a footnote. Because like the overall
distracts from the flow.
yeah, the
of
overall flow
yeah.
is really nice. And then like, yeah, you see, oh, there's a note there, and then you go and you can get all that background, all those citations. So like kudos to really good literature deployment is one thing that I have to say. And especially some pretty heavy hitting theory too, like, you know, I didn't even get into some of the like Chicana feminism that y'all were like referencing in the footnotes and things like that. There's a lot in here. The exoticism research, the, you know, children's television, and like neoliberalism, hypercapitalism, like all of this stuff is in the footnotes. So it's a really nice resource from that perspective too, because it's, I think, an accessible topic to kind of get you into that, and then like kind of dip your toe into like, wait, what's hypercapitalism, and then like here's a source to go read. So it kind of it lends itself to unpacking into greater depth.
Oh, I would love that if somebody reads it and they just get inspired to like read the huge book on capitalism by Thomas Piketty or something.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, that I always tell people when I'm doing research, like sometimes you find the chapter or the article and you're like, oh, this was what I was looking for my framing, and then I'm like, that's when you just cannibalize the footnotes, right? Like just like pull everything and go, all right, let's see what this, you know, if I don't know it, let me pull all of these, and then those are your next. It's like you only need one of those, maybe two, and depending on the project, and that can be like your whole chapter then can kind of come from, you know, I'm doing these keyword searches, and then I find one thing, and then I'm just pulling from their bibliographies and their notes. So that's like a great way to do it. It's like, well, you already thought this source was useful, so you're probably gonna like what they read.
What they were reading. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what I like here, our conclusion again just draws the distinction between the two. Where in the game, Atkinson supports the imperialistic geolocational cues from the Smithsonian with a synthesized theme for Vile and its leader. While the game features a dichotomous soundtrack dividing between the original music and imperialistic pre-existing music, the composers for the show do not attempt either. They instead opt for a more exoticist approach with whitewashed geolocational music and a main theme centering on Mozart's music. While Sandiego does not have much screen time in the game, a woman composer helps give her musical voice a free and original sonic agency. Not to mention she gets her dialogue too. And then conversely, the two men writing music for the show entrap Sandiego in a musical cage of their sound and that of Mozart. So Too Long Didn't Read is this idea that she gets very different agency between the show and the game. Right. Musically and otherwise. And that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
In both, though, she remains mysterious, multiply othered, and escapes our old leitmotifs. So interesting. I'm a fan. I liked it. It was such an unexpected proposal, too. I like everything in this book, again, because I got kind of brought, Lisa already had the seed of the idea and said, I want a Ludo person. Do you want to do this with me? I think we'd work well together. That's kind of how I started. And then from there, I think I posted the call for papers, but I wasn't like really going after it because I didn't know what I was even going to do. I'm like, animation? I'm going to read it. I guess I'll go read about Disney and stuff. I didn't really know the animation literature. There's like a whole side of that where I wasn't sure. So I don't know that I was really pushing any particular people in my... The only one I remember was when we got the stuff back from the publisher. They give you like commentary on your proposal, and one of them said, "Oh, we'd like to see something on a more current game, just for the sake of like thinking about marketing and like making sure." And so we approached Stefan about writing about Kingdom Hearts. obviously, and because that's like a big piece of Stefan's work. And then Stefan said, "No, I'm finishing the dissertation." And then we went to Ryan Thompson. We're like, "Hey, would you write on Kingdom Hearts?" And he said, "No, ask Stefan. That's Stefan's work." And I said, "Yeah, we did. Would you please write on it?" So that's how we got. It's actually my favorite piece that Ryan has produced to date. So we'll have him on soon for that. But most of these, like, I didn't really know what to expect. And so, like, there's chapters that even from people whose work I know pretty well, like you two and Karen and Andrew, that I just like had no idea these topics were even brewing in your thought process. Like Karen writing on Drawn Together was like totally out of left field for me. It's like I know her as a medievalist, I know about her civilization work, it's like I know some of the games she's worked on, and so to see her write on Drawn Together, I was just like, what? Very unexpected chapter. And a good one, and handled, I think, really well for the material, but it's just like that show's pretty raunchy, so it was just kind of like an unexpected pick. So yeah, there were moments like that which made this whole process like really, really fun and kind of unexpected, and then really framing, hey, this is an opportunity to learn how to edit too, and to think about, like, yeah, there's a power structure in place here with an editor, but I want it to not feel top down and authoritative. I want it to feel conversational, and like we are giving suggestions among peers and options, and with space for someone to say, well, no, this is part of my voice, or sometimes you get that feedback and you realize you're actually a little more attached to the something than you realized, and then you sort of figure out, oh, how do I reframe this then, because I'm learning that that's actually important to me to have in here. So I want people to have space to be able to do that. So you two were very easy to work with.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, it was likewise. It's sort of like, I think Brent and I have been really fortunate in the people that we've been working with that are willing to publish what we're working on have all been different, but like really excellent. And I thought that you managed to achieve the goal that like you and Lisa set out for. There's of course there's a power dynamic there, but that it was meant to be more of like a peer kind of collaborative thing. And you had just this great like schedule, made it real easy to like hold that.
We're both super organized. Yeah, I think it helped that like Lisa was already like so organized, and I'm a very organized person, and so the two of us ended up being just a really good combo, where I felt like I've been on books where, and it's not a bad thing, but where the editors don't agree about what needs to be done in the chapter, and they give you two different sets of feedback and they contradict each other, and that can be very productive. I'm not saying it's not, but it was a little uncanny to see Lisa and I agreeing at, where we're just like same. We ended up deciding to do, whoever read the chapter first would leave the first round of comments, and the other person would just go on to the same document and add. And that way you all were just getting back one chapter that had everything. And then if we disagreed, or like, here's a different option, we could put that in there. But I think it made it kind of streamlined and nice to work with. So it's something that I've had a few different times. I've been lucky where even Game Sound Con, running that with Matthew Thompson, we met this week to look over our proposals, and every year that we've done it so far, we have exactly the same, like, yes, accept, or not. Like, we know exactly what we want to do. I don't know. It's like, how do we share this brain this much? We tend to, there's no convincing. It's we know exactly what seems like a good fit for that environment. We also get very, few proposals compared to like a NACFAGM, where we get like 60, 70, 80. We tend to only have 10 or so, because folks don't want to go to LA for some reason. But
it was really nice. There's like a nested comments almost, and like where y'all were all kind of bouncing off of each other at times in the editing process. It was really nice, because I've mainly in the theory world, it's you usually get the Jekyll and Hyde editors, and And it can, as you say, it can be productive at times, but whew, sometimes it's not.
It can be really hard as the person getting the comments to sort of know how to reconcile them. Yeah. I've had this with, articles and reviewer 1 and reviewer 2 too, where my
Yes.
first article, I had like a really positive and then a pretty negative, and then I'm trying to, the editors are returning them both to me, and then I'm kind of like, okay, what do I do with this? The editors aren't saying it's unpublishable trash, but I'm having these two very different reads here, and I remember taking it to my advisor and be like, help. I don't know what to do here. It's not really about like ego being bruised. It's just the idea that there's two very different reads on this, and I'm not sure what to, and then it was like, okay, so a lot of the problem with the mean one is it wasn't being worded constructively. So let's go through it together and like try to glean something actionable out of it, even though it was not written that way. And that way, then you will show a lot of care in responding to it, and then the editors should take note of that, and be like, yeah, you did make some really good changes based on it, sort of thing. But that's hard. And that's why cultivating relationships in the field is really important, because then when you get that feedback and it's like crushing, you're like, what do I do with this? It's nice to have someone you can go to and just be like, hey, so I got this really weird comment,
what
and
do
like,
I do with this?
yeah, like,
you get this from that.
Yeah, let me talk this out and figure out how to approach it. So it kind of it's just serendipity that we worked well together, and then I thought really none of the I didn't feel like anybody had a particularly, even the ones that like sent us a chapter that like wasn't done when they sent in, that are like, it was clearly like here it is for now, like it's not even done yet. Like I felt like everything felt smooth and like, because everybody was communicating if stuff was late, like we were being nobody was hiding from us, like, which to me says a lot. There is that like, oh, I owe somebody that, and I'm just gonna keep my head down, and they'll eventually reach out. And we didn't have that with anybody in this book. Everybody was like super communicative. Andrew waves hand. Andrew says that because Andrew sent us, I think it was missing like a concluded, like there was just like a part that was yet to be written, but it was like clearly enough to go, and we were able to like make suggestions for like, here's some ways you could tie this up, or things like that. So yeah, and you were by no means the only one. We had a few that entrusted us with that, and so that's also been something in the gender book that I've kind of taken forward, where I've been able to say, do you have anything, like, would it help? Because it doesn't always help if it's not totally like a done draft. Some people don't want to have too many cooks spoil the broth at that point. But sometimes you're like, I'm kind of at a point where I need to figure out what I'm doing with this, and it can be useful to have the editors come in and sort of give you some ideas of like, oh, I really like this piece of it, and that is not at all sort of how I was raised into the field of like, you submit a draft and it's like very complete, and you work with them. But yeah, I don't know. This is just something I think about as I move into these places where I'm like trying to create opportunities for people to publish with these edited collections, and like think about, okay, so being an editor, that's, privilege and a responsibility, and like
a lot of responsibility.
Like, what does it look like, And yet, despite all that, none of that like made anything loose to the point. We turned it into the day when we said we would. The manuscript was in exactly on time, which is pretty cool.
It was pretty cool. It was a great moment.
And there's some serendipity there too, that like a lot of good volume. It's not like a failing if it isn't. It's just cool that things lined up. The workflow seemed to work well with the authors, and but like even our gender book is going to be delayed just because we still have authors trying to get chapters to us, like first draft chapters. So like that's going to push everything back a little bit. It's like it's not a bad thing. It's kind of cool that it worked out as well as it did. So I've taken up so much of y'all's time. But I really appreciate having you two on. And
it's really great chatting.
What's next for you all? Do you have any current like chapters in the works, articles?
Yeah. We're working on something with for another edited collection with Andrew Powell
Nice.
and Richard Anatone. I have something on Hey Arnold
Cool.
that'll come out sometime between this anytime tomorrow or this time next year. The journal's going through rebranding. They
sure.
want to use like my issue in part of their rebranding, but until the rebranding's done, it's sort of up in the air. But we'll be writing about with Andrew and Richard about King Arthur and the Knights of Justice.
Ooh.
Another show.
Very cool. Oh, I can't wait. I cannot wait. Well, best of luck to you both. Together and
Thank you for having us,
separately.
Dana.
I'm so glad to have you and to get to unpack again just a really, really tight chapter. In the end, this turned into, I think, a very useful, very assignable, good resource that starts with something that people wouldn't think it goes as deep as it does, and then it just sort of surprises you with like, oh my gosh, there's all of these different threads we can follow. So I just really appreciate how this one came together. So I'm going to have nothing but nice things to say for everybody in this book. I'm so happy with how this book has turned out. It was just such an unknown quantity going in, and it's been really cool to see it shape into something that I'm real excited about. I think it's going to be an interesting and a useful read for anybody. So thank you so much.
Yes. I've already told the library at KU to get a copy.
Yeah, get all the libraries to do it first, and then they'll release the paperback after that kind of first round is done. I actually saw Ohio State told me that they got a hardbound copy for the library and like an unlimited access ebook. So they got both because they wanted to make sure, the library is huge at Ohio State. So, but they were able to make sure that like it's very accessible. I was like, that's pretty cool. All right, well, everyone enjoy your Friday. I'm going to take us off stream, and next week, I believe, is Dominic's chapter on DuckTales from the book. So, DuckTales remastered, and the show and everything. So, see you next week for that.